Ohio State silences the doubters in a big win in Happy Valley.
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's been a stellar season in the world of college football. The fourth matchup between top five teams, and it did not disappoint. Ohio State survives Penn State. Kind of an ugly game in Happy Valley, but the Buckeyes keep their Big Ten hopes alive. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a great deal. New customers can get a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet is successful. That's right. One $5 bet. If you get it right, you get $150 only at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, thank you for making this your first listen. We will, of course, have a lot to say about the whole day in college football, but the game of the day was Ohio State, Penn State. Penn State had this game, had all the momentum after that pick six, and then Chip Kelly went to work. A fantastic performance by the offensive coordinator of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Yes, Will Howard was great. Yes, they ran the dang ball. But when all is said and done, it's just methodical, moving down the field, getting Penn State going side to side, using that aggressiveness against them. This is what Chip Kelly was there to do. This is why he came from UCLA as a head coach to work for his former assistant at Ohio State. And it was only symbolic that to ice the game away, Will Howard gets the first down on an option, slides down at the right time this time, and gets a win over the team he grew up rooting for, and holds a little bit of animosity towards with James Franklin, who didn't recruit him. So what does this mean for Ohio State? It means they're in the Big Ten race. Make no mistake, a loss to Penn State would have knocked Ohio State out of the Big Ten race. Not officially, but think of all of the things that would have to happen in order for Ohio State to get back in. Indiana would have to lose. Now, Ohio State can take care of one of those losses if it wants to at the end of the season, but there's nothing to show you right now that Indiana is going to lose to anybody else. And then Penn State would have a 2-game advantage and a head-to-head. Ohio State or Oregon would have had a 2-game advantage and a head-to-head. So too much traffic if Ohio State lost that game, but it didn't. And now the Big Ten race is a big jumbled mess that over the next month is going to be fascinating to watch evolve. Absolutely fascinating. But Chip Kelly was the MVP. However, the offensive line for Ohio State deserves not even a golf clap. I would stand up, but you would not see my face. You would see just this fantastic Alpha Prime shirt. They deserve a standing ovation. That offensive line got absolutely abused by Nebraska last week. Now, 6 tackles for loss Penn State had, so it wasn't pretty all the time, but it was enough. It was enough for Chip Kelly to get in second and longs or second and shorts and third and shorts. They converted 6 of 12 in terms of third downs. Judkins had 95. You gave Will Howard a chance to make plays on the ground. You distributed carries all over the place. And like I said, Chip Kelly used that rushing attack to perfection. Abdul got running side to side. The speed of Penn State was used against it. Misdirection all over the place. And the fact that you had 3 players with 10 or more carries shows you just how great Chip Kelly was working this game. You can look at the stat sheet and say, okay, 358 wasn't that big of an offensive performance and whatever. Yes, it was. You go into Penn State, you want to be as smart as possible. Giving Will Howard that throw on the first drive, and I think that was trying to make A little too much of a statement, and Chip Kelly could have gotten all up in his feels. Chip Kelly could have tried to show that he's the smartest person in the room. Chip Kelly has done that quite a bit during his career, but he didn't. He settled down. That big game experience that Ohio State had in Eugene came into play. No panic, reset, and just get the job done. It was a phenomenal performance from the Ohio State Buckeyes. And like I said, now back in the Big Ten championship race. What about on the other side? What about on the other sideline? James Franklin. We'll talk about that next. It's College Football Smothered and Covered, powered by Locked On. Hey, you know what? You, the fan, you need to pick me up, right? Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan, it's not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all day. Tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like you. The fans who are in the parking lot and those who are last to leave, they see you. I needed a 5 Hour Energy this morning. Had a campfire last night or a fire outside in the fire pit. Didn't get a whole lot of sleep. Had a 5 Hour Energy. Bam. Ready to go for a college football Saturday. Ready to go to bring you the best coverage on college football smothered and covered. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for a big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Fan the Stand 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help you stay fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available at 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. James Franklin. Big game James. Well, actually, it's not so big game James. Now 4-17 in his career at Penn State against Ohio State and Michigan. Now 1-10 against Ohio State while he's at Penn State. What's worse, though, is that this felt different. It felt to me like, okay, Ohio State, offensive line issues, maybe not as dynamic of a quarterback as they've had in the past, struggling running the football just a little bit. Going into Happy Valley, a Penn State team that, yeah, they have some quarterback issues in terms of Drew Aller's health, but it didn't seem to matter. The rushing attack was on point, has been on point. The defense has been lights out. Abu Carter all over the place. This was it. This was the time for James Franklin to prove that he's actually a big game coach, that he can actually not just make this new 12-team college football playoff, but actually win it. And he failed. He failed developing an offensive game plan that would have been successful. He failed with clock management multiple times. James Franklin is not a big game coach. He showed it over and over and over again, and we saw it on Saturday. Now, I will say this. The 12-team playoff is perfect for a guy like James Franklin and perfect for a team like Penn State because they're probably going to make it. And Penn State's always one of those teams on the outside looking in, but barely on the outside looking in terms of the 14 playoff format. Now they'll probably get in, and then big game James will come out again and prove he's not so big game James. Does that mean that Penn State needs to make a change? The answer is no. You still have it pretty good. Right now, James Franklin is Mark Richt at Georgia. Close enough to get there. Always on the fringe. Has won conference championships in the past. Needed some special circumstances to get to a point where you can win conference championships. But never elite. Never a team that's at the pinnacle of the sport. Never a team that goes out there and knows it can whip your ass every single game. It's always punching above its weight. And sometimes it runs into a heavyweight who throws a haymaker and knocks him back on his ass. That's exactly what happened. Exactly what happened in this game. I don't fault Drew Aller. I don't fault Bo Prabula. I fault the coaching. Why didn't Tyler Warren have a catch in the first half? I get it. Caleb Downs was all over him, but we've seen Warren make circus catch after circus catch after circus catch. You have to let him cook. You have to at least get him in the game plan. He was barely targeted. It was mind-boggling. And Andy Koltanecki is a really good offensive coordinator. We saw that in week 1, and it's continued all season long. That was a 180-degree turn from what we thought we knew about this offensive staff and Koltanecki as a play caller. There weren't many attempts at all to stretch the field. Like Penn State, that was the missing piece last year. You fixed it, and then you reverted back to what you used to be. Now, I know close game, big game. You don't want to make mistakes, but that's always what Penn State does. That's the reason they fail in these situations, and you reverted right back to it. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again. And once again, in a big game, Penn State doesn't try to throw the ball downfield. The big play was non-existent. At some point, you got to take risks against these great teams. James Franklin decided not to, and what do you know? Not so big game James came out again, and Penn State lost a big game. It's like clockwork, man. Over and over and over again. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need right there. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check play-by-play live stats or whatever right there on the same place in which you will place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started again with $150 if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It was really cool to see Will Howard sort of close the book on that game in very poetic fashion. I've not been the biggest Will Howard guy. I think everybody who's watched this show or listens to this show knows that. I became even less of a Will Howard guy when he slid with 0 seconds left trying to set up the potential game winner against Oregon. But how poetic is this that on the final drive, he runs for the first down and slides down to win a big game. I'm starting to get convinced that Will Howard can be a national championship quarterback. I really am. Now, is he going to be Dylan Gabriel in terms of stats? No, of course not. Is he going to be a stat monster at all? Like, you look at what he's done, it's not that sexy, but it gets the job done. And in a year like this, where a lot of these college football playoff contenders have quarterbacks who are very streaky, who are not very dependable, whose highs are very high, whose lows are very low, maybe you just want steady Eddie. And that's exactly what Will Howard has become. So I was wrong about it. I was wrong about him. I was wrong about this Ohio State offense. And for him to do that and not have deer in headlights syndrome after what happened last week with his offensive line, and to do it on the road in the 4th largest stadium on the planet. Will Howard, you got my vote, man. I am on board. Not doubting you ever again. You are the man. Hey, you know what? You can join the subtext group. Link right below. I've been texting people in the subtext group all afternoon. We'll continue to do it all night and into the morning and all week long. The link right there below. Thank you for making this your first listen. Of course, we appreciate all of you for checking this show out. We'll be back later. Full Week 10 recap coming up. Until then, have a great Saturday.